Hello and welcome to the channel. On today's segment, we're talking about David, who is referred to as a man after God's own heart. Okay, so when we look at the life of David, he made many mistakes. Okay, the biggest one that we know of is how he had his one of his soldiers killed in the line of battle. Simply because he had slept with his wife. So, for those of you who are not familiar with the story, basically it was a time when he had sent his troops into war, and him as king had to remain back because, it's like, I'm the king, I don't need to be in the war front. So while he was in the war front, while the other men were in the war front, David gazed upon Bathsheba. And then because of that, he slept with her. And unfortunately, after sleeping with her, she became pregnant. And so now, to try and rectify that situation, David tried to bring back her husband, who was Uriah, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know how to pronounce it, but yes. Called him back on the battlefield and said, okay, I'm giving you this leeway to at least sleep with your wife. His hope was that if they slept together, he would have cancelled, so that in spite of her being pregnant, she wouldn't know that the child was David's. But then he decided, no, I cannot sleep with my wife while my fellow men are at the battlefront, so I'm going to leave and head back to the battlefront. So his plan failed. And so now, to correct that, he now has the man killed. He basically commanded the commander to make sure that he was on the war front so that he gets killed in battle. And basically that's how that goes down. But then here's one thing now that we see is very unique about David's life. Firstly, God himself is the one who called David a man after his own heart. So we need to remember that God does not go back on his word. And so, this was at a time when Saul had disobeyed God. He gave him an instruction to wait for the prophet to come and pray for them, rather to give offerings before they go into battle, so that their battle was safe or secure. So basically, Saul got tired of waiting. He was worried that his troops would leave him, and so he now decided to give the offering himself, which was something that was supposed to be done by strictly only the prophets. And so that's the first mistake that we see that was made by Saul. And so just as he was done giving the offering, the prophet Jonathan arrives. And then basically now that's where he's reminded as Saul, like, what you've done, you've sinned against God, you've disobeyed once again. And so basically God has now chosen a man after his own heart, because you are not listening to what God wants. And now here is where we try to understand, David wasn't perfect, but then here's how we try to understand how, in spite of his imperfections, he was still referred to as a man after God's own heart. If you read the book of Psalm, every time David did something wrong, or every time David felt he was overwhelmed by something, he ran to God. And that's one thing we need to realize. David saw God in every situation. And basically that's what we see when you read the Bible in the book of Psalm. It should be 151, where he talks about how he sinned and he is covered in blood and everything. And what you realize is he's referring to things that are basically affecting human beings. It's like, I did this to my fellow brother, my fellow sister. But then instead of him just looking at it as, I've done something wrong to my brother, or I've done something wrong to you, he says it as, I have sinned against God. And that's what we need to understand, that if you're going to see God in everything, then and only then can you actually be referred to as someone who is after God's own heart. Because you would not want to fail to forgive someone, because you realize that by not forgiving this person, I'm actually not forgiving God. Because you need to remember that in the book of Genesis, it tells us that we are made in the image of God. So by basically doing something to my fellow human being, who is the image of God, I am doing something wrong to God. And so by that logic, if you're going to address human beings as just human beings and forget that we have this extra mantle upon us, then we're going to be people who basically just go through life. But David realized that I have done this wrong thing to a human being, but more so I have sinned against God. And that is why he was called a man after God's own heart, because he saw God in everything. It's like, I've done this to a human being, but in spite of it all, I've ultimately sinned against God. And so in countless times we look at beautiful psalms that were written, because of how much David was seeking to be in God's presence, how much David was seeking to be in the good books with God. Like, in spite of how much I've gone wrong, in spite of what I've done wrong, God, I still need you. And that's the kind of mindset I'm encouraging you to have, that in spite of everything, you might have grudges at the office, you might have a boss who stresses you, you might have come out of a relationship which was very stressful, and this person took away your joy, took away your peace. But then you need to realize that you need to look beyond the human being that you're dealing with and realize that it's God. You need to realize, for example, what went through in the life of Joseph. Okay, I feel Joseph was also someone who went through life and he suffered much. His brothers sold him into slavery as a slave. He was accused of rape. He goes to jail. All those things happened in his life. But in spite of it all, we see that the Bible says before the time came for his dreams to be fulfilled, he had to be tested in terms of character. And basically that's how we need to look at certain things in life. If I'm truly going to be a man after God's own heart, I need to realize that certain things happen in life not because the human being has sinned against me, but because God is using this person to reach out to me, to build something in me. And so when I begin to see God in everything, then can I truly say I am a man after God's own heart, or I am a woman after God's own heart. And so that is my encouragement today. Seek God first, as the Bible says, put God first in everything that you do, and then truly you can be referred to, and you will be referred to as a man or woman after God's own heart. So have a blessed day, and even today I pray that if you're listening to this, remember to put God first, and indeed you will be referred to as a man or woman after God's own heart. Blessings.